this is something that comes out like every single episode of this show. We focus on preventing. We focus on prevention. The thing is that prevention, it doesn't move you. Like unless you have a really tough moment in which you feel like, oh shit, if I don't do something about it, I'm gonna go crazy. Or if I don't do something about it, I'm gonna end up in a really bad place. Unless you have that little catalyzer, people are very unlikely to take action to anything. That's why I enjoy scaring people
But when you're saying
because
that, I'm thinking of the smoking. People
yeah,
smoke and they're like, it's not going to happen to me. It's a great question. I'm not really sure what we should do in terms of prevention in a whole array like sugar and
I was lucky enough to have a very bad event with my health when I turned 30. I moved to this country and I don't know what happened to me. Everything started like falling apart. I was in the hospital a lot. I had several issues with my back, several issues with other stuff. And I thought to myself, dude, I am too young to be this deteriorated. I'm going to have to start doing something about it. And then I started doing something about it. And I became aware of all of the possible things that could end up in a horrible place if I don't take action now. And now means 10 years ago when I was 30. Then I realized, man, I am in my prime. And this is the time to build good bones. This is the time to build good muscle. This is the time to build a good brain. However, most people most people living their best life are not going to start thinking, well, what did I do today for my brain that is not going to make me go crazy tomorrow?
but
I
I would still say if the people are still flourishing and thriving and living their best life unconsciously, they must be doing something,
yeah.
which is good,
Uh,
and but if you get up in the morning and it's like I have to go to work, I drive the car, I go to work, oh, I have to stay here 8 hours. Okay, now it's finished. I go back to home, I put the TV on and I sleep. That's not flourishing.
mm,
And the human body, the human being, we can do so much more. We can be happy, we can create, and that is really the science of well-being. Being at baseline without illness
it's not flourishing.
it's not flourishing and it's not enough. I
Mm,
personally want more for my life. I want to wake up in the morning, not every morning, let's face it, but I want to wake up in the morning and say, oh, today's a happy day. I have a lot of projects going on. I'm going to meet a friend later on. I'm going to record a podcast. And it's empowering and it's joyful. And life is
mm,
so much easier when you can have those kind of emotions. And it doesn't mean that you're always happy, smiling, or that you have a sense of fulfillment. But even if you have them unregularly, it still makes a huge difference and it gives you a purpose in your life. You know why you get up in the morning, and all these aspects contributes to your well-being. And what is key, which is mind blowing for me, is that when we're studying people who work towards their mental fitness or their well-being, I like to call it mental fitness because there seems to be a negative connotation to mental uh,
right.
health or well-being, but you want to be strong, so let's be strong
Yeah.
in your head. People who do that, they actually have a better immune system. So we don't really
Mm.
know exactly how this is happening, but it's proven. So there's a huge correlation. If you work towards your mental health, you actually are in a better physical health. That the different hormones in your body actually influence the immune system, your heart rates. You have less risk of diabetes. You have less risk of developing an early onset of Alzheimer's, for instance, and so on and so on and so on. So it's like a cascade of good things is happening to you when you really try to work on yourself or to improve yourself. Now, I'm not saying there are outliers. Maybe 10% of the population is super happy, super thriving, super optimistic. That is possible. I mean, there are outliers everywhere. Some people never go to the fitness and, they're super fit. And you're like, how come? And they eat and they drink and so on. But
I
outliers,
hate those.
no, don't hate.
Although we do not necessarily fear for our lives every day, many of us deal with anxiety levels that would rival those of an ancestor running for his life, chased by a beast. It is hard to plan for a better future under such stress. It is hard to act and implement new habits, even if you know they will help. So, what is it inside of those who can actually implement change? What is it that makes them move? What is it that makes them successful at implementing strategies to improve their existence? What if I told you that the resilience that you need to achieve that can be acquired, can be learned, and can be trained by using evidence-based methods from real studies and real science on the matter? Enters our guest for today. NATHALIE GRAND teaches resilience and well-being through science-based positive psychology tools. She's enthusiastic about sharing her passion for evidence-based, well-trained practices that everyone can implement to build a more resilient self, increase their well-being, and flourish. NATHALIE translates the latest academic research into engaging workshops where participants can expect to learn key concepts and, most importantly, the best way to apply them to everyday life solutions. So, I hope you enjoy the podcast. Thank you for staying. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome everybody to another episode of this video podcast, or just audio podcast if you are just listening to us. Auto-regulator, or as in English it will have to be auto-regulate, but you know me. Welcome to all of my 3 listeners. Today we have a very this is going to be a fun one, and it's going to be one that is you're gonna have to go over many times, I believe. Today we have NATHALIE GRAND come to the podcast. And NATHALIE, thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
NATHALIE, can you please let our 6 listeners know who you are?
So yes, thank you for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to be here. So I'm NATHALIE. I practice positive psychology and I specialize in resilience training. And mainly I really specialize on online group resilience training. And I like to call it mental fitness, so fitness for your brain.
That is what I'm going after. Now, a person that I respect a lot pointed me in your direction, and I'm so grateful, because resilience is a topic that is very important to me. But I realized that I was going about it all wrong, because and this is kind of a confession thing. I have had, as I'm sure many people have had, many struggles in life. And my attitude towards the struggles has always been, because I despise victim mentality. It has been always, you know what? No, I am not going to be a victim. I am not going to be a wuss. I'm going to be tough. I'm going to be tough as hell. I'm going to be tough as nails. So I'm going to stifle my emotions whenever I'm struggling. And that really didn't, or hasn't worked out the best way for me. NATHALIE, now when we listen to the word resilience, that's what I thought that it was. Just don't be a pussy. Try to be rough.
Yeah.
Can you let us know what is resilience?
So it's not going to be from my point of view. It's going to be about science, because to me, science is really at the center of what I do. I was really interested to know what science is. There a science of well-being? And that's how I got into positive psychology. There is a lot of help available on the internet, and we usually call it self-help. It's not bad per se, but we don't really know, is there a foundation for it? You know, is it really working? Is it not working? So I have a rational kind of mentality that I always want to know, has there been tests done about it, and what is it saying, and so on. But I before defining resilience, I would love to come back to what you were saying about toughness. And it's very interesting, because it is, I would say, the first misconception of resilience. And you even have books written by ex-soldiers, or even sometimes former sports professional that says, you know, you have to be tough. And there's this image also in some cultures that you have to teach your kids to be tough. And that actually creates more problems than solutions. Being resilient is also incorporating what we call self-compassion. It's the ability to have to know that you need to cut yourself some slack, basically, in basic words. It's stop self-criticizing yourself, but accept what is happening, learn from it, and learn how to grow from it. So basically, resilience is part of psychology, and it's part of positive psychology, which is the science of well-being. And it's the ability to bounce back after adversity. So let's say something is happening to you, and it's very personal. Some people react to events differently than other people. And it's really the interpretation that you make of this event that creates a positive or a negative emotion. And it's okay to have a negative emotions. I mean, we're driven by negative emotions. We're alive because of our negative emotions. So if you think back then in the jungle, if you had let's say a lion attacking you, well, you had to run for it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here as a species. So those negative emotions, the release of cortisol, for instance, in our body, are here to make us aware of dangers. And we still use this nowadays. So when you're crossing the street, you have a little, oh, what's happening? Is it free? Can I cross? And this little surge of angst or cortisol surge is actually there to protect you. So the human body is actually quite well built. Now, it's true that we don't live in the jungle anymore, so we don't always need to have this negative emotion. And this is what we need to learn to interpret and to redirect, in a sense. But if you just build away your emotion in somewhere, then they're going to come back. You need to process them, you need to label them, you need to accept what is happening, but you need to also be able to have a positive outlook. So let's say something is happening to you. What is good is, normally, like fitness, you would train beforehand, so you already have some resources within you that you can tap into for the adverse event to have less impact on you. But something's happening to you, and what research has shown that some people, they bounce back. So they come back to their baseline level. Let's say you get scared by something, it takes you one day, and then after a good night's sleep, you're back. Some people will need 3 nights sleep, and some people will grow even further. And this is the notion of post-traumatic growth, where some adverse events in some people allows them to not only come back to the baseline they were, but to even grow further. And even traumatic events like the loss of a family member, for instance. So resilience is really the study of how do you bounce back after any adverse event. Could be a bad appraisal at work, could be the loss of a family member. So there's a whole spectrum, and the spectrum is okay because we all react differently depending on our history, our values, the way we're built. So it's not, there's no judgment in the sense of even if a small event has a big impact on you, that's okay, as long as you know how to digest it and to build resources to grow back from it. I hope that answers part of your question.
That is fascinating. I love that. I love that because I was positively going about it all wrong. Because in a way, it is either don't be too soft or go to the softest possible way that you can do nothing wrong. All of the circumstances are against you, and there is nothing that you have in your power to change whatever happens in your life because you have no agency. So I like that you put it like in the middle. It's like it is different for everybody. It is different for everybody, but there is so much that you can do as an individual to go about things. Okay, now that takes me to another. I mean, like, where or at what point was this part of investigation developed? How did it start? Why did they start looking into this?
So there's been, I would say, since 30 years, there's been a lot of study on resilience. So studies on resilience were done before positive psychology was founded as a field in 1998. The first studies were done in Hawaii on kids that let's say, did not have the favorable growing up environment, whether it was poverty, whether it was a broken family setting. And the scientists studying that, they wanted to know, if you take twins, for instance, in the same family, how come some people grow in healthy adults and some people grow having mental issues, for an instance? What's the difference? Is there a genetic component? Is there an environment component? And that's really how the field developed, trying to find out this question of why, when somebody is confronted to a certain event, it could be the same for two people, but their reaction is different. So that was really the starting point. And that was mainly done in children. So the field started while studying the outcomes of children living in different settings. And then there was a whole focus on soldiers. So basically it was more most of the soldiers, or some soldiers, I think it's 50 to 60% actually, they came back from war and they had some post-traumatic symptoms, PTSD, right? They had some stress and they were relieving events and so on. And then in some companies, you would have soldier companies, you would have soldiers coming back and they were thriving, and they had lived the same shocking things that their friends and colleagues had lived, but they did not show any symptoms. So then the army was also very interested in learning, so how come and what can we do? Maybe if we train the soldiers before they go to war, we can actually give them tools for them not to experience PTSD when they come back. So there's a whole lot of prevention idea, and it can be applied to societies. Instead of waiting for people to, I don't know, do a burnout, go into depression and so on, what can you do beforehand to maybe give them training, whether formal or informal trainings, so that we don't have those medical costs, if you want. But I think, as well as a society, we want society to strive, we want them to flourish, we want everyone to be able to add a positive addition to society. So that's how the field developed, and it's going now really in different directions, in the sense that there's a whole lot of research now on resilience on healthcare workers. How are they dealing with the COVID crisis? The idea is, how can we provide activities, training, interventions for them to build resources to get through this COVID crisis, and not, you know, end up in 2 years and have no healthcare workers anymore because they're all, you know, too much stressed, fed up and so on. So that's really, it's still quite new, in the sense that, you know, 30 years is not huge. And every year there's like great studies coming out, or new we call them interventions. That's not really the word we like to use normally with clients, but they're positive psychology interventions. And it's basically a set of practical exercises or tools that you can do normally in non-clinical populations. So that means that I work with people who usually don't have a declared mental illness, or that they're not followed by a psychologist and doing therapy on one-to-one. I really work with general population, as if when you're going to the fitness, you're going to the fitness before you have an issue, just to, you know, train and stay healthy. So that's the same idea about the resilience training that we should all do.
We should all do it. I have this is something that comes out like every single episode of this show, because we in Auto-regulator, we focus on preventing. We focus on prevention. The thing is that prevention is not, it doesn't move you. You don't like, unless you have a really tough moment in which you feel like, oh shit, if I don't do something about it, I'm gonna go crazy. Or if I don't do something about it, I'm gonna end up in a really bad place. Unless you have that little catalyzer, people are very unlikely to take action to anything. That's why I enjoy scaring people. I love scaring people to death.
When you're saying that, I'm thinking of the smoking. You know, people smoke and they're like, it's not going to happen to me. It's a great question. I'm not really sure what we should do in terms of prevention in a whole array, like sugar, and it's I don't know.
The scaring thing is that, for example, I had I was lucky enough to have a very bad event with my health when I turned 30. I moved to this country and I don't know what happened to me. Everything started like falling apart. I was in the hospital a lot. I had several issues with my back, several issues with other stuff. And I thought to myself, dude, I am too young. I'm too young to be this deteriorated. I'm gonna have to start doing something about it. And then I started doing something about it, and I became aware of all of the possible things that could end up in a horrible place if I don't take action now. And now means 10 years ago when I was 30. Then I realized, man, I am in my prime, and this is the time to build good bones. This is the time to build good muscle. This is the time to build a good brain. However, most people living their best life are not going to start thinking, well, what did I do today for my brain that is not going to make me go crazy tomorrow?
But I would still say if the people are still flourishing and thriving and living their best life, unconsciously they must be doing something.
They
And
must be doing something. Yeah.
which is good, you know.
Mm.
But if you get up in the morning and it's like, I have to go to work, I drive the car, I go to work, oh, I have to stay here 8 hours. Okay, now it's finished. I go back to home, I put the TV on and I sleep. That's not flourishing. And the human body, the human being, we can do so much more. We can be happy, we can create, and that is really the science of well-being. Being at baseline without illness,
It's not flourishing.
it's not flourishing, and it's not enough. I personally want more for my life. I want to wake up in the morning, not every morning, let's face it, but I want to wake up in the morning and say, oh, today's a happy day. I have a lot of projects going on. I'm going to meet a friend later on. I'm going to record a podcast. And it's empowering and it's joyful. And life is so much easier when you can have those kind of emotions. And it doesn't mean that you're always happy, smiling, or that you have a sense of fulfillment. But even if you have them unregularly, it still makes a huge difference, and it gives you a purpose in your life. You know why you get up in the morning, and all these aspects contributes to your well-being. And what is key, which is mind-blowing for me, is that when we're studying people who work towards their mental fitness or their well-being, I like to call it mental fitness because there seems to be a negative connotation to mental
Right.
health or well-being, but you want to be strong, so let's be strong in your head. People who do that, they actually have a better immune system. So we don't really know exactly how this is happening, but it's proven. So there's a huge correlation. If you work towards your mental health, you actually are in a better physical health. So
Yeah.
that the different hormones in your body actually influence the immune system, your heart rates. You have less risk of diabetes. You have less risk of developing an early onset of Alzheimer's, for instance, and so on and so on and so on. So it's like a cascade of good things is happening to you when you really try to work on yourself or to improve yourself. Now, I'm not saying there are outliers. Maybe 10% of the population is super happy, super thriving, super optimistic. That is possible. I mean, there are outliers everywhere. Some people never go to the fitness and, they're super fit. And you're like, how come? And they eat and they drink and so on. But outliers.
I hate those.
No, don't hate them. That's fine. I mean, then it's an opportunity for you and me to exercise our motivation and to try and be a better person. So it's also
I have to work on that one. I have to work on being a better person. I'm a horrible person. I am so jealous of those people. But that brings me to something important, is that even though we live in a softer time, we live in a softer time than our ancestors used to live in. I mean, they were like rough, robust fellows. We are not as rough and as robust, but our threats are real in our minds. I mean, like, the stress is real, the struggle is real. I used to think to myself, and I do that as an exercise to bring myself back to like when I am like drowning in circles in a problem and I'm feeling shitty and I don't know what to do, then I start thinking, come on, I'm not storming the beaches of Normandy. I'm okay. I am safe.
good.
I can deal with this. But to me, in the beginning, it feels like I am like, my God, I'm gonna die. No, no, I'm not gonna
That's
die.
normal.
Exactly. That, but my point is that even though we are not exposed to danger all the time, our brains don't know that there's not real danger.
There's like a scientific explanation, not per se, but if you look at the human evolution, like from when we were crawling, I'm not an anthropologist, so X years ago, it didn't happen in 2 years that we can stand up, It takes 100, 200, 300 years for the body to evolve. And in the brain, you have, I'm going to simplify it, but you have like the old part of the brain and the newer part, which is the prefrontal cortex of the brain. So the prefrontal cortex is your rational mind. It's what you're trying to do. Okay, let's face it, there's no danger, so I can calm down. But you need time to do that, right? So you need to pause and to think what is happening. If a lion was attacking you and you're like, wait, let me pause and let me think, shall I run or not? It's too late, right? So for like thousands of years, the human brain was trained, and the connections in the brain were done in the sense that you need to have an automatic reaction. There's no time to pause before running. So now you're right, the environment has changed, but this part of the brain, which is located at the back of your head, is still an old system in a sense. It hasn't evolved yet. So the body evolved in some ways, but this automatic release of certain hormones, for instance, that make you run away, or maybe if you put actually it's interesting, if you put your hand on fire, for instance, you actually take it off and you feel the pain before your brain knows that this is happening. So it's basically your peripheral nerves that make you take your hand out of the fire because they're sensing the danger. But when we do tests, for instance, in science lab, the brain has not registered yet that there's a danger. So it's really, the human body is really well built. It's to protect you from danger. And maybe in 200 and 300 years time, then we will be built differently, because the body evolves from one generation to the other and very slowly, but it still evolves. But I would like to challenge you on the fact that you're saying that we're less stressed from the environment, so there's no lions and so on. Yes, but I think we've never been more stressed now, mental stress and not physical stress, than ever before.
That is true.
From even for our kids or for ourselves, work is always there. They're always asking more. I think of my parents, when they were working, there was no emails. At 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, work was done. You go home, you enjoy the family or friends or whatever. Nowadays, there's an emergency, can you stay 1 hour more, this, and then you get a text, you get an email, it bips on your phone, tomorrow morning at 8, emergency meeting, so you
are so available all the time.
You're available all the time, and there seems to be a bad habit generally, I think collectively, of always doing more, always asking for more, always creating more, and never stopping and enjoying maybe the success and we did well, let's celebrate, And I think for kids it's the same thing. We want them to know Chinese, English and Spanish when they're 5, and then they need to do sports, and then they need to do this, and then they never actually get bored playing at home. So this kind of mental stress is kind of the same or worse than the physical stress that maybe our parents.
That is very true. That is, and it's the kind of stress that you don't see.
Absolutely.
It's a kind of monster that you don't see. That is not the lion that is there. If you saw it, then it would be maybe easier to overcome it. And at some point you have to stop running because thing is gone.
Rational because you see it physically in that sense. Yeah.
That is, oh my God, yeah, that is absolutely true. I think, and I don't know, maybe women tend to be a little more affected by this. I say it totally anecdotally because I'm talking out of my ass here. But the times that I have been thriving, when I thrive at work or I just had a great experience at work or whatever, there is always the dark cloud of the imposter syndrome there. Like, oh my God, today is going to be the day that they're going to realize that I'm a fraud. that I'm a fraud, that I don't have a place in here. Oh my God, today is the day that they're gonna find out. Today is the day. And that shit like rains on my parade every time. That thing that you were saying, that we don't allow ourselves a moment to actually say, fuck it, I did this and I excelled at it, and good for me. I did something that I am actually proud of. Why?
So that goes a bit out of the realm of positive psychology. I can talk of my personal experience, which I don't mind talking about, but I don't have science backing for it. I like to point that out. I think we all have the imposter syndrome, and it's something we can work on. And I don't know why we have it. It's an interesting question. I should research it. I think I'm not sure how to say this, right? But I think you can grow out of it, because I've done quite myself. I've grown out of it. Speaking to you about positive psychology is one thing, I'm not a PhD, so I'm like, oh, am I allowed to speak about positive psychology? Am I allowed to do this? There's a lot of these questions. Or I'm also working in corporate settings, and yes, you're right. We always ask ourselves, can I do this? And I don't have the studies, but I do think from what I've seen within human resource studies is that when women apply to a job, they usually try to tick the box of everything that is asked within a future job. Whereas a man usually is going to be like, oh, I don't know half of this, but I'm a good person. Let's go for it, right? And at the interview, you perform differently as well, because as a woman, you're like, oh, I don't know how to do this, and I don't know how to do that. And the guy was like, yeah, sure, I can do it. And that usually, I'm saying usually, right? Please, with brackets, a man is going to say, once I get the job, I'll figure it out. And I don't know why.
That gives me so much anxiety, so much.
Like, you learn it, Mariana, you learn it, and you realize that we're all human beings. At the end of the day, we all go to the toilet at the end of the day, right? It's the same thing. We're all human beings. We all sleep. We all do the same thing. There's no God within us, right? So there's no one person who's better than the other. And you might have a better academic background, but that doesn't make the whole difference, right? You need also emotional intelligence, you need experience, and then maybe we can talk about you need strength, and we all have different strength or character strengths, for instance. So we all build or bring something different to the table, and once you're aware and you believe that I can bring something which is different than what other people can bring, so I have a value, and I have the right to be here, and I matter for society, I matter for the company that I'm working in, then this imposter syndrome goes away, in my experience.
I have to keep working on that. And that brings me to my next point.
Go on.
That brings me to my next point. I started sweating out of my armpits. So just to think about the imposter syndrome. When you talk about resilience training, that implies that there are things that you can actually do, that things that are practical that you can actually implement in order to be in a better place whenever you are confronted with adversity, or to bounce back from this adversity or whatever it is that attacks you, or the demands that you have. Like, there are ways to improve your response to it.
Absolutely.
Please tell us.
So I do 8 weeks of training to teach you the basics, and then there are other workshops. So how long do we have?
Oh my God, I don't want you to spill the beans, because
No,
I want people taking your workshops, but
no, I will give you some practical tips. The field is so, I'm always amazed, and I love reading about the new research and things that you can do, but there are some practical things, and just to tell you, that's my view on building resilient skills is first to work on resources that you should always work on, so before you have the adverse event. And then there's some real-time resilience, okay, when you're in the middle of the bucket and there's a storm, and okay, what do you do? So there's also skills and activities that you can build also resources for on the spot kind. The line is jumping on you, what do you do? Your boss is harassing you, what do you do? Your kids are shouting and you're like, I can't deal with this, what do you do? And then there's everything which is like the recovery phase after the adverse event that you could do. So I would say the first one is to develop your awareness. I know it sounds very what, and it's not. It's really science-based. Okay, so there have been research. It's the mindfulness-based training in the US. Everyone's heard of it. It's to alleviate pain as well. So it's been used within, for instance, patients as an alternative to taking medicines. For instance, if you're having stress, if you're having pain, what could you do? And that's probably from the 70s. Kabat-Zinn, his studies were developed on that, and he's actually a doctor who then developed a mindfulness-based training based on his medical experience. So based on,
Wow.
but awareness is basically knowing. There are two things: knowing what is happening to you and being able to label it, right? So sometimes you come home after work and you're like, I'm in a bad mood. I'm in a bad mood. Don't speak to me. I'm in a bad mood. That's not helping. It's not getting you out of the bad mood. And if you have a partner or children, well, they don't really understand what is happening. So it's much better to maybe have a conversation to say, I am feeling angry and deceived. And what are those two emotions? Why are they different? And I am feeling this way because of this and this happened. So this triggered this reaction in me. And unfortunately, I'm not feeling well because of that. So I know that taking a bath relaxes me. So I would need 1 to 2 hours to myself to put some music and to have a bath, right? That's one way of dealing with adverse events. And that's also one way of being aware. So being able to label your emotion. And that's also very fun to do with kids, right? Because there's not only joy, happiness, and love, right? There's like 50, 80 different emotions. So you could spend a whole week trying to feel this emotion, to watch a film and to label, oh, look, this is awe, you know, this is the feeling of awe, this is what we feel in our body. So that's maybe the first thing is being aware. And being aware allows you to label emotion, and being aware allows you to take a distance with what is happening.
That is a very interesting thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, because so many times, mostly in the winter time, because I am a sufferer of SID. Something triggers some kind of, I know that it's negative because I feel bad about it, but sometimes I just navigate the rest of the day feeling that little shadow. It's like that ghost, that little ghost of the impact that something had in me. And I am not, I mean, I have never actually sat down and said, okay, what is it that bothers me about that? That is very interesting.
I'm really into journaling, in the sense that we sometimes have ideas in our brain of what is happening, and we have an internal talk, which is completely normal. We all have that, you know. I'm just trying to put it out there. It's not that you're crazy. I'm not crazy. You know, you talk to yourself sometimes at the third person and so on, but it stays in your head. And the fact that you put it down asks you to have a conscious effort to interpret, to try and find, okay, I am sad, I am feeling sad, you know, I am feeling sad, because just to write it down allows you to process what is happening and allow you to take distance. So being more aware, and like somebody is watching the situation from a more external point of view. So the fact of seeing it written down sometimes allow you to have that distance. Okay, so that's the first thing.
Okay, awareness. That's a good one.
To your point, maybe something very interesting to do when you have that is, so we've talked about the negativity bias, which is, you know, your brain actually feels more and more for longer periods the negative emotions. So you can counteract this by fueling positive emotions. So Barbara Fredrickson did a lot of studies on what's the ratio, and it seems to be between 3 to 1 or 5 to 1, depending on the studies, but usually 3 to 1. You would need 3 positive emotion for 1 negative emotion, and that
is so good. Okay.
That is due to the fact that, you know, your negative hormones stay in your body, because the lion has left, let's say, but it might come back. So if you know the lion leaves and then you're like, woohoo, and then it comes back, oh no, I'm dead, you know. So usually negative emotion stays for a longer period, and positive emotion can snap out. So within 2 minutes you forgot that you're happy, you're good. So savoring, that's another thing. Let's park this savoring, we can talk about that later, but it's to to know, and that's the exercise that you could do, is when you're labeling emotion, you could do that with positive emotions. And one great thing, we all have phones, is to create a collage or to take pictures of things that bring you positive emotions. You could, if you like to do craft, you could actually do it on a piece of paper, and then you take a picture of it. So even if you're at work, there's a stressful moment, you just take your phone and look, maybe positive memories with your child, pictures of your wedding, something that brings you joy, different positive emotion. So we all know each other, ourselves better. So we all know which positive emotion. Was it time in nature? Was it time with family? Was it a project that I'm done that I'm super grateful for and super happy? Do I feel a sense of achievement? Maybe it's my degree, take my degree into picture. And so you can fuel positive emotions to counteract this negativity or this cloud that you mentioned that you sometimes have over your head. But it takes a conscious effort, right? It's not, there's no magic pill. You need to put in the
but
effort.
you have to do it.
You have to do it. And then savoring is another one. Savoring, it's a part of awareness, but it's really trying to prolong, that positive moment. So let's say you're at the beach and it's like the perfect setting. You're warm and there's a sunset. Really consciously try to tell yourself, this is a blissful moment. Let me enjoy this warmth. Let me remember it. Oh, it's so great. And then maybe a day later, if you're talking to someone, recall it and say, I had this great moment I want to share with you. I was at the beach, there was no one, I could hear the waves and it felt so good. And so you're reliving the positive moments and the positive memories. And that allows you to build your resources. So it's kind of the capita that you would have inside of you to be able to deal with the negatives that's going to happen during your day. And this is scientifically proven, right? So it's not just me telling you it's a great idea to do it. So savoring is actually one tool that you can build to improve your well-being and your flourishing.
And then you can tap into it.
Exactly. You can tap into it when you need it, when you're faced with stress and adversity. So it's not a magic solution, I'm not saying, let's say you lose your dog, there's an accident, okay, I'm going to savor a moment and it's going to be okay. But it's like pieces of a puzzles or a jigsaw. And once you put the jigsaw together, it all makes sense and it works for your mental health and it works for your physical health. Okay. So these are 3 strategies, and there are a lot of ones.
Oh my God, this is really, really good. And it's so simple. It is so simple that people might take it for granted. It is not. I mean, mostly with that part of I think that we do that with our phones a lot. And with Instagram a lot. It's like, okay, I'm having an amazing moment. I am going to take a picture of this to show off on the internet. Instead of, that would be the moment in which, okay, this moment might fuel me later on whenever I have that problem.
It's like, we do fitness, weight training, we go for cardio, whatever, even if we don't have diabetes, but we do it to be able to be stronger for whatever's going to happen, getting old and so on. So it's the same concept. And another one, sorry, I really want to go. It's winter, depending where your listeners are, but fabulous, incredible studies. So they did studies in hospital, patients that had the same operation, the same kind of history and so on. They saw that if they put a green plant in the room, the patient recovered more quickly.
No way.
It's crazy. It really is crazy. So basically now there's a whole also field of positive architecture where they're trying to build hospitals with maybe windows that give a view outside, because it actually helps stimulate your immune system. So it's a small thing. So I have plans.
That is so beautiful. I was gonna say that your background is so pretty, and I have stupid door.
But it makes a difference. It makes a difference to your well-being. So I also have plants in front of me so I can see them, and it's actually called ecotherapy, and it's really, since COVID, it's been really studied, and it was done also in Japan. People go to forest as a sign of therapy, and it works for your mental health, it works for your physical health. Everything that has to do with wood also seems to have an influence, and everything related to water. So having a bath, a lot of people intuitively have a bath, but the water is nature, and it calms your body down. So it's not, you know, Pollyanna invented thing. It really is scientifically proven that it's going to help your mental health. It's going to contribute. So there's no magic pill, but it's winter, buy a plant, buy a green plant. And then the fact of taking care of the green plant is a sort of self-care. So it's this 5 minutes just for you and your plant, and you're taking care of it, you're watering it. So it's kind of a mindfulness moment that you're having, and that's really a cheap, easy thing to do. Buy a green plant.
That is a very easy thing to do. I am a little worried that all of my plants tend to die a lot, but around,
I can give you tips. So you have to
oh
buy.
my God.
There are some plants. You can just Google NASA. Did you say NASA? You know, the American
NASA?
spatial program, the NASA
Oh,
plant.
NASA. Uh-huh.
NASA, yeah. They've got, I think, 20 plants that they studied that actually have a positive impact on your environment, in the sense that, you know, plants are leaving, they leave, they're breathing creatures in a sense. So they
Yeah.
take the CO2 out of the air, and they clean the air that you're around. So there are like 20 plants that have been really studied and recognized, and these usually are unkillable. Like aloe vera, the plant, it's like a cactus. Honestly,
Okay.
if you kill this one, come on, you
No,
bring it
no,
back.
that one is thriving. That one is
See?
thriving.
They're
She's very
easy.
tough.
Some
Okay,
plants
okay.
are harder, but there are some plants, you know, they're used to live in the desert, for instance, and they're still green. So these, they require little knowledge of plants, and anyone, all your listeners can buy one of these, and they do well. Even coffee plants, you know, there's that
Really?
do coffees. Yeah. So wait, I'll show you. Can you see it?
Oh, she's so pretty.
Yeah, it's a coffee plant. You just water it once a week, and it's so pretty, and it's like, yeah.
That's my kind of plant. I should know that. I'm Colombian.
See, so
Yeah, but I name my plants and my aloe vera, and she's Bruce Willis. She has survived for so long.
see,
It is it is uncanny. It is uncanny. Okay, but that's a very, very good insights. Plants and nature. Now, walking in nature, you know, I have a problem with this whole hippie thing.
okay, tell me. Sort it out.
That, like, I have never, I'm like, intuitively, as you said before, you tend towards certain things that you do to actually feel better, like taking a bath or getting in the shower is like a cat, like a booth where you can simulate dialogues where you always win,
Yeah.
and that is always awesome. Going in nature and taking a walk, I have never felt worse about taking a walk, but I assume that it was because of exercise, but I think it has to do with nature itself. However, people who I talk to about this say, oh my God, yes, you have to take your shoes off and go hug a tree. You lost me there. You lost me there.
You know, I don't have the studies. I haven't
Okay.
seen them, but I listened. It's really funny. I listened 2 days ago to Lee Waters, and she's a psychologist in Australia, and does a lot of work with children. And she mentioned that. So I just heard it, but that if you have a lunch break and you're stressed, and if you have a park, she actually recommended just take your shoes off and walk on the grass for like 5 minutes to get your body calm down.
Really?
I don't know. I haven't read the studies, but I do believe her totally. So
Okay. So it comes from a good source.
it comes from a good source. But you know what? You have to do what feels right for you and what feels comfortable for you. So I've never taken my shoes off, because I also live in a country where it's cold, right? And you can't walk on the road. You know, so if I lived in Australia by the beach, I would surely walk on the beach without my shoes. But if you
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true.
don't feel comfortable, don't do it. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
try it once or twice. If it's not your thing, it's not your thing. And
Let's see what happens.
there's in positive psychology, this notion of the activity that I'm going to propose to a client needs to have a fit. So that's what I'm telling you. There might be 30, 40 different activities that one can do to build your resilience, but they're not all going to resonate with you. With some clients, they'd rather do like a gratitude journal. For some other people, they'd rather you go and see people and have a physical relationship and to see them and not write a letter to them. So it's important that you try different things and then see which one works better for you. What's the best fit for you? And it's also about, if you think of medical treatments, not all medical treatment will have the same impact. Let's say you break your foot. Some people want to do physiotherapy, some people don't want to do. It really depends. So there's like maybe the motorway, or one best proven way, but it doesn't mean that some alternatives do not exist. So if walking barefoot is not your thing, it's not your thing. Just walking in nature, trying to maybe hear the birds sing and so on, that allows you to work and train your mindfulness, and that's amazing. It's amazing that you find a time to go into nature. And I could talk hours about the movement that you're doing. It's not a topic of this conversation, but when you're just walking, you're activating your brain cells, so they become more active, so they create new cells as well. So just by walking, you're actually taking care of your brain, because you're allowing oxygenation, you're allowing your brain to exercise in a sense. If we're always sitting down, and which is the danger of all this home office with this COVID circle going on, or if we're always in front of the television, we're not activating our cells. So we're not giving a chance for our body to recuperate and to build new resources. So just walking. I think the studies, I'm not sure I remember, I think the study that they had done was 12 minutes of biking was sufficient to reset your brain and to take out the negative hormones. So you don't
only 12?
Yeah, you don't have to walk 12 hours, or you don't have to run a marathon. Just doing 15 minutes is already enough. But for some people, it's hard to get started. So you need to find your way, and maybe with help, to build a routine and to build healthier habits. And once it's a routine, it's like brushing your teeth, right? It's something that you do without even asking yourself, should I do it? You just go and you do it.
That is an interesting thing. And that is something, I mean, like, for example, we were talking about meditation.
Yeah.
I have never heard of an activity that is most agreed upon, that is great, but that people just don't do. People just don't. And the thing is that they always think, oh yeah, meditation is amazing. Yeah, I have this app in my phone. Yeah, whatever I want, I'm gonna start it. I'm gonna meditate the hell out of my brain. But the thing is that yes, these strategies are gold, because they are easy to implement, but you have to do the work in implementing them. You have to put them in your routine. You have to find a way to actually be able to,
you have to find a way. And this is also something, it's a whole aspect of the workshops that I do. I also spend normally 1 to 2 weeks explaining habits. What does science say on habit building? How can you build a habit? How can you break an old habit? So you don't break an old habit, you rewrite another habit on top, basically, and you need to reward yourself. So there's a whole lot of research also around habit building and how can you successfully do it. But it also takes effort. So it's not just waking up in the morning and in 2 minutes it's done. It takes mental effort. Like when you're learning a new subject, it's not just reading the book and it. Maybe you need to read it like 5 times, 6 times, 7 times to really understand the notion, and that new pathways in your brain have been created to put the information together. But yes, new habits, you can build it for sure. And once a habit is there, it's gonna free up your mental health as well, right? Because if every day I'm thinking, oh, shall I brush my teeth or not?
Oh, hell no.
Then it takes your mental space away, and you need to have some things on automatic, because motivation is like a muscle. Basically, you have a certain amount, and after a while, then it goes away. And what is automatic or within your routine or habit is going to stay, and what is not. So if you meditate once in a while, then it's easier to not meditate anymore. Not this morning, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it next week, and then I haven't done it in 3 months. And meditation is hard. It took me a while, and it's something that I'm still working on. It's not a habit yet. A lot of things in my life are habits. Working out is a non-questionable,
non-negotiable.
Yeah, it's done. Lunch break is working out. There you go. It's done. So yeah, there's a lot of things in my life that I've managed to build as a habit, and I think meditation is really the last one, because I really had issues to know, what is meditation? What am I supposed to do? You know, should I sit there and listen to music? So I also got a coach,
that
you
is
know. That's okay, because maybe meditation is not for everyone, you know.
right.
Meditation is not your thing. Well, there are so many other things that we can do. There's
However, there are many different kinds, and that kept me
absolutely,
away
absolutely.
completely from meditation. And at some point, because I was having a very hard time, I had become very, very reactive, and like everything, just everything was the freaking end of the world. So I said to myself, I need to do something to balance myself out, like, because I'm going insane. So I came upon this book that from this woman that teaches a kind of meditation that takes only 15 minutes. And she's very evidence-based. She provides references. And
Oh, that's
there
interesting.
is
You should share it.
no, yeah, I will. There is no cuckoo thing about it. There is nothing magical or like, like mystical. No, you just do the thing that you have to do. You don't need special music. You don't need special candles. You don't need to sit in crazy ass positions. You don't need to do. I mean, like if you are at a place that is not dangerous for you to close your eyes and sit down, that is the place where you can meditate. You can do it whenever you want.
It's interesting what you're saying, because it's also the critique that we have from some clients, because they have this conception that, you know, what we're doing is yogi yoo-hoo kind of movement kind of thing. And I mean, it's a good thing that there are a lot of self-help coaches out there, or books, because it might be the first entry within the realm of well-being. And I think that, you know, in a way it's positive, and in a way it's negative, because some people have the image that it comes from nowhere. You have to, you know, put some candles and sing a song. And, you know, what I do is science, so it's completely different.
Right.
So it's a misconception that sometimes, you know, we have to fight against. And then, yeah, so you're right, to your point, you know, there's a lot of self-help is a plus, and could be a barrier as well. So yeah.
Yeah, reputation is not always the best, and there is this stigma. Now, by the way, the name of the book is, I believe, it's Stress Less, Accomplish More.
Okay.
And the author is Emily Fletcher, is
Yep.
her name. Right. I mean, like, I do not regret doing that. I even do it twice a day. I am so sold into it that, well, like, twice a day is like half an hour. This is nothing. But and of course, sometimes I'm in the mood to do it. Sometimes I'm not. But it is so into my routine. It's just like taking a boring shower.
I love it.
Yeah, it's very easy. You have to, I mean, like, just read it or listen to it. I mean, I didn't read. I got the audio version.
I'll get it.
It was a very good entrance, like non like secular kind of meditation style. So I can recommend it. Okay, now before I let you go, because I want to be respectful of your time, I wanted to talk a little bit about children, because many of my listeners and my viewers are mommies, and I'm not a mommy myself, but I have seen them struggle. There's so many things that you can train your children at. I think that resilience should be like a very important one. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's a very interesting topic. So there's a whole field of what we call positive institution and positive education, because positive psychology was built on 3 pillars. And obviously I've talked a lot about the individual, and then you have everything which is part of the institutions, so schools and families, and what can we do with that. And there's it's interesting, there's some countries that put a lot of emphasis on that. For instance, Canada or Australia. Australia is very advanced, and in some schools, well-being programs or even resilience programs are part of the curriculum. And I found a study that showed that it was done in the US, they did within the school, they divided the classes into 2 groups, and one group had well-being training, and the other did not have anything. It was like the control group. And in the end, the SAT scores, that the group that actually did well-being training instead of studying more math or whatever, they actually scored 11% higher at the end of the year exams, which
That's
is
a lot.
huge, because it actually empowers you. You know,
Wow.
the tools of positive psychology, it's you get, so you feel empowered because you get to know your emotions, you know what's positive in you, you know how to deal with negativity, how to deal with stress. So you have an exam coming up and you're, you know, 10 and you have a lot of stress and you can lose your means, or you have an oral presentation and you've never done one. So there's some also exercises that are going to build what is called your self-efficacy. It's basically the belief, or the belief that you have the ability within you to pass the exam. So that is empowering. So if you go within an exam feeling, okay, I studied, I allowed enough time, I feel good, I slept well, so I believe I have the ability to pass this exam. It's a bit like the Pygmalion effect or self-fulfilling prophecy. Usually the outcome is better because just the belief that you have means that you actually perform better. So in schools, what they do, and what maybe, you know, your listeners can do, is what we talked at the beginning of the labeling of emotions. So putting words, so as a parent, we teach our kids the different words that they're going to use, and I think we also have to help them to label some of the feelings that they have. You know, when you have small kids, sometimes they throw a tantrum, and when you ask them what's wrong, they don't know. They can't tell you what's wrong. They're just mad, angry, but they don't really know why. So trying to help them when they're young to put a word on that emotion, and maybe to feel the emotion together, whether it's, I don't know, if it's awe, you know, say it, you know, I'm feeling awe means this. And maybe when we go to the park and you see a giraffe, you'll have awe. And so you can play around with emotions, and any type of what we talked about you can do with your kids. So for instance, gratitude at night during dinner time, you can say, okay, what are you grateful for? What happened, you know, today that is happy for you? And
What a beautiful habit.
yeah, that's beautiful, right? And it triggers conversation instead of looking at your iPhone, for instance. And the last part that I want to talk about is character strength. So we did not have time to talk about character strength, but it's really a useful and very powerful tool for adults, and especially for kids. So the research has shown that we all have 24 universal character strength wherever we come from. So there's been 20 years of research, and if you go, it's called the VIA.org. So VIA, it's an institute, and they've studied it for a long time, and they're doing studies all around the world. And there's a free test, and there's also a test for children, and it's free to take. And they're going to tell you what are your character strengths. So they're going to be ranked is not the right word, but we all have them, but in different proportions, right? So you have to have one on top, right? You can't have them everywhere and scattered. So your character strength, the top ones, they're called your signature strength. And these are the ones that are energizing for you, they're empowering. These are the ones you usually use more often. They could be kindness, creativity, love of learning. And it's really something fun and empowering to do with kids. And you can do them even when they're young. And you know, I was very surprised, they get it straight away. So you can do games with different types of strength and explain the strengths to them, and then you can try and do train spotting. Oh, this person reacted this way, and they should use this strength to actually react in another way. So there's a whole book around it. There's a whole lot of information on the internet. If you go on the VIA.org website, all the information is free.
I'm going to leave the link in the description.
Yeah, that would be great. And then you can actually, instead of telling to your child, oh, you did bad in that class, you should go in with a positive mindset. Say, okay, that wasn't the best. Maybe next time you could use your strength of creativity to learn this topic better.
That is so cool.
You know? And that
it's like you have superpowers.
It's like, yeah, we all have superpowers, but nowadays in society, and I guess in the schools that we went, At the end of the year, they just tell you that's your weakness. You should get better at this, get better at that, and this and this and that. And actually, no, flip the coin, because it's like a coin. Flip it and say, okay, that's not the best, but you have great strength in this and this. So how can you use your strength of love of learning to get better at math? Or if it's creativity, instead of doing, not Excel spreadsheet, but you get the point, just writing the numbers, maybe put animals on them, to teach them math differently, because that's their strength. And maybe they'll get better at math because they'll think of animals when they're trying to do, their calculus. So there's there's really a lot of things that you can do that are easy and fun to do with the children. And then you can also call out some, I don't want to call them negative, but let's say he's throwing a tantrum, and maybe he's overusing his strength, or he wants to paint something and there's paint all over the house, like on your walls, and you're like, oh my God. Instead of shouting and saying, stop it, saying, I think you're overusing your creative strength. Now let's use the strength to clean everything up. And it's as a parent, it's more positive to react this way as well for you, than to start shouting and saying, look at this mess, what are we going to do? Because that's also
it's unfortunate,
closing
but
the child as well.
Man, being a parent has to be so hard. I
Especially
have
now.
nothing, yeah, I have nothing but respect by parents. And the thing is that mommies and daddies, they are always trying to find a way to give their little ones a better start in life. And what a better, what a better way of equipping them, like to
fun.
survive.
Yeah.
And it's fun. And it's
then
fun.
They know how to use it afterwards when they grow up. So then they're in a work setting. They know, oh, I have this strength that my colleagues don't have. And to your point of not feeling, not having the right, how did you say it? Feeling like a fraud. You don't feel like a fraud because you have specific strength that you can bring in a team, because you've been brought up this way.
You have something to bring to the table.
You have something to bring to the table, and you recognize in others that they are different because they have different strengths. So it's also accepting the other. So it's allowing you to matter, and it's allowing the other one to matter as well. So that's very empowering, and it helps to build also resilience, because when your child will be faced with adverse events or stress, they'll know, oh, it's okay, I have strength and I can get through this using my strength. So it's also giving them tools to feel better and to be able to flourish. And there's a lot of research in Australia, and Lee Waters, I could give you the name, she has a book called The Strength Switch, which is specifically for parenting and using a strength approach with kids. And it's amazing. I would also say, maybe to finish off, that I would advise parents to read the book and maybe get a training on it. There are some online trainings to know and to experience yourself how to use those strengths. And the second thing I want to finish off is, we are all examples. So your children will mimic what you're doing. So if you're reacting to a phone call, start shouting and swearing, well, it's not going to work for your child, right? So he's going to do the same thing. So you can't ask your child something that you're not modeling. So this is why I encourage everyone listening to take a course. If it could be an online course, could be a self-paced course, read a book, do the exercise. Sometimes in books, psychologists write exercise at the end and people don't do them. No, sit down, do them, write them,
do the work
yourself, and know how it feels, and then you can be an example for your child.
That is amazing, Nathalie. And yes, children are bullshit detectors. You cannot you cannot get away with no.
You can try,
no,
but it's not working.
You can try, it's not gonna work. So Nathalie, to let you go, can you please tell my very, very lucky listeners to have you today how to find you, how to access your information?
Sure. I have a website, NATHALIEGRAND.com. I also have social media handles, Facebook and Instagram. You have the links on my website for all accounts. I'm most active on Instagram, but I have both. Anyone can contact me, send me an email, nathalie@nathaliegran.com. And I have different workshops. I like to be creative, so I change them So they're not always the same.
They are alive.
They're a live workshop, yeah, for sure. They're not
Mm.
self-paced. They're live workshop, and they're a group workshop, because I really believe in the strength of the group, with learning from each other, how people, you teach something and then they're like, oh, but I applied it this way and it worked. Oh, so it's giving ideas to other people, and it's also a feeling of community, to feel that I'm not the only one, wanting to improve or struggling with this or trying to find a solution. And I think now with I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 4 wave of COVID, I'm going to open something in January, I think, just for 1 month. I was
Awesome.
thinking of doing like a very special prize, because winter is difficult, this period is difficult, COVID is still here, so something under $50 just for 1 month. And I really want to do what I usually do myself, is I do a recap of what went well during the year, what I want to do more of, and how to set goals. So from a science point of view, challenging goals and goals that would fulfill you, how to build a routine. And I want to throw in there also some practices that people could then do the whole year to reach their goals, whether it's optimism, whether it's, being more mindful. How can you take time to be more mindful? So it's going to be fun. And the idea is really to try and give back some of this energy, and to share what science has to say, to try and equip people with the right tools to get past this difficult period that we're actually facing with COVID still, with us, unfortunately. So that's going to be my next workshop, January, in a month's time.
I am very excited about that, because boy, we need that. Man, we need that. Nathalie, this was an amazing time that I had with you. I feel so selfish and so giddy that I had the whole hour with you.
See?
So
It was a
I am
pleasure.
going to, okay. So thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to let you go now.
Yeah, I'm super
because I really
excited.
have to pee.
Thank you guys so much for your time and for making it to this point. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you would like to get more episodes, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a comment on YouTube or a review on Apple Podcasts. But if you really are all about the self-regulation and would like to support my work, please follow the link in the description and head on to Patreon so that you become part of this project. Thank you again for staying to this point. Don't forget to auto-regulate.